I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
Welcome to the Red Pill Roundtable with Steve Scorpio.
All right, welcome to the show. Sorry, everybody. I don't know what's going on here. We were supposed to have a guest, Niara Isley, and I can see her in my favorites thing, trying to add her to the show, and she didn't pick up, and now she's just been flat out removed. I'm here with Dave Scorpio. How you doing, buddy?
Mr. Stephen Crawford, how you doing, man? I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Oh, okay, there it is. It shows up. Sometimes Skype really likes to mess with me, and I thought they were trying to mess with us by taking her off of my list there, but she's there now. Okay, we're joined this morning. Now, actually, let me get this up. Also by Dan Willis. How are you doing this morning, Dan?
Hey, Stephen. It's great to be on your show again.
All right. Here we go. Okay, so Niara Isley claims she was abducted at age 25 while working for the U.S. Air Force at the Tonopah Test Range in Nevada. Throughout 1980, she was taken to the moon 8 to 10 times. What started as an ordinary job working at radar in Nellis became a special assignment, which would change her life. Now, Niara, actually, am I saying your name right? Let's hear you say your name so I don't say it wrong for the rest of the show. How are you doing today? Is she there? You got to unmute your mic.
Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, my name is actually pronounced Niara.
Niara, okay.
Like a tiara, only with an N on the front.
Oh, that makes so much more sense than what I was saying.
Okay. What was your question?
Just how are you doing today? For what? First off.
Doing pretty good.
And where is it you're calling us from? A general area. What state?
Southwestern Colorado.
Southwestern Colorado. Okay, fantastic. And we're also joined by Ahmad Painter. Ahmad, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing
Good
great.
Morning. Fantastic. Okay, so Dan had helped get Niara, Niara, on the show for us today. So Dan, would you like to get the ball rolling and start the first question?
Sure. Yeah, this is great. Niara and I were in the movie Above Majestic. I don't know if anybody's seen that. My small part in that was talking about how Eisenhower lost control, back in the 50s, and is actually the cause of a lot of stuff that's going on today, like the New York Times release about the, reverse engineering and all that. It's just fascinating to me. Niara's had this, this is 20, and she's been also on a Mars 20 and back. I just found out, and the fact that there's these operations going on that are not necessarily in the light, you could say, that are going on, that are, sexually abusing, personnel and in these operations that have no legal constitutional oversight that's going on in these secret space programs.
Right.
And I think Niara, I've been mispronouncing. I apologize.
Niara. like a knee. Niara.
Niara. Niara.
We will have it right by the end of the show.
We'll have it right by the end of the show.
Well, if you can't think of anything else, Niagara, I had to kind of deal with some people in the past. So I said, okay, if you can't handle Niara, just do Niagara.
That I can do because I live in Niagara. Fantastic.
Got to have a sense of humor about all this, you know.
Okay, well, actually, how about you give us a little touch of your story, just so then we can know where we want to go from there with the other hosts asking you a few questions.
Well, I guess it really starts right after I separated from the military. I had a bunch of very strange things happening. Basically, I didn't know that I had PTSD, but I had all the symptoms, and I know that in hindsight. I was having heart problems where my heart would take off at a mad gallop, and I'd feel like somebody was strangling me at the same time. Wow. And it was very unpleasant. I used breathing and pranayama exercises to still that back down, and I was handled it very successfully doing that for quite a long time. But then I still had the emotions, but I never put together that it was PTSD, because from what I recalled of my time in service, there was nothing to have PTSD about.
Right.
But it just kind of went on, and it got more and more intense. So it was kind of alternating between rages, anxiety attacks, and depression. And finally I just thought, man, I am just miserable, and I'm making my family miserable. And I decided to end my life. But because I've been a spiritual person my whole life, when the day came where I was going to do something, either gun or pills, I thought to myself, you've been out of your body. You better think about this for a few minutes before you act.
Right.
And so I sat down and I thought things through, and I realized actually that everything that I had experienced spiritually pointed to the fact that if I ended my life this way, I could find myself in a very bad place on the other side, and I might be stuck there for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, why take the chance, right?
So I decided I better stick around here and work it out. And because I can't go on living the way I have been living, I need to make like a 500% commitment to healing whatever's going on here. And that really set my feet on the path to discovering the lost memories and what had happened to me. So I ran into a friend when I was living in Las Vegas, Nevada, and he noticed every time my military came up in conversation, I'd kind of just skate away from the topic and change it to something else. And so he sat me down one afternoon. He says, "Can you tell me about your military time?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "I went to boot camp at Blackland Air Force Base in Texas. And then I went to Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi for technical training school. Then I went home on leave for a while for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then my first duty station was Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, and I worked at Tonopah. And at that moment that I said I worked at Tonopah, I stopped talking because I couldn't remember anything about working at Tonopah, and I know that I worked there 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
And this wave of nausea swept over my body. And it was really a bad shake. And then later on that same year, I ran into Bud Hopkins at not too many people remember too much about him anymore, sadly, but he was one of the premier researchers in the alien abduction field with hypnosis. So I ran into him at the Whole Life Expo in Las Vegas, Nevada. Also ran into Alex Collier there, which was really a wonderful meeting. And I went to his talk, and at the end of his talk, when he was doing the Q&A, I raised my hand. I said, I have this strange experience from childhood. I have this other, memory from a dream in childhood. And then I have these 3 to 4 months of missing time when I was working in the military in Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. And he said, talk to me after we're done with the presentation. So I did. And I told him all this stuff that I was wondering about. And he said, would you like to do a hypnosis session and try to find out what went on? I said, yes, I would. So I had this session with him, and what came out was that I'd been taken out in the middle of the night at gunpoint out of my hotel room, which is where we were billeted at the time. I was told to wear some fatigues that they kind of tossed at me. They had no rank insignia, no name tags, no identifying marks of any kind. So I put those fatigues on. We went into like a big blue suburban vehicle, and we drove out to the range. Once we were there at the radar site, me and two other guys were in there trying to run the test, and whatever they had flying in the sky that night in the middle of the night couldn't be tracked. It would appear on the scope for a second, and as soon as we tried to get a lock, it would disappear and appear someplace else on the scope if we were lucky. I mean, surface-to-air missile and anti-aircraft artillery radar is a very different kind of radar. It targets things with a little pencil beam because it is a targeting radar, and then you get the big radar that sweeps the sky. That was the radar that would call the coordinates to us and tell us to point our radar in a particular spot to try to get a target lock on an aircraft. So basically, these things could not be targeted. They could not be get a radar lock on them with that type of radar that I worked on. So after that was over, I was standing on the deck of the radar van with those two guys, and we had been absolutely forbidden to speak to each other at all beyond what was necessary in the van to run the test. So we're standing there, we're looking in the sky, and there are several craft floating up in the sky. And
what did those craft look like? Do you remember?
The one I remember the best is the one I focused on. It was the closest, and it was saucer-shaped, very similar to what Bob Lazar reported.
Okay.
It was glowing orange on the bottom, and it had it was like very thin metal, like a skin, and it had lights lighting up in sequence that went in a circular motion underneath of it. It wasn't like the craft was spinning underneath, but these lights were lighting up in sequence that kind of gave a spinning look to it.
Right. Now, was that all one colored light?
It was orange for some reason. I have a feeling from what I heard from, what was it? Who's the guy? Otis Carr.
Right.
That story that came out. I think the craft shows different colors depending on what it's doing. So maybe when hovering, orange was the hover color. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm just saying what I saw. And also, there was a deep hum coming from it, like speakers at a rock concert when they're on, but there's no music playing through them.
Right.
And there was a feel of a lot of static electricity in the air, kind of made your skin tingle. So that's how what it was looking like when I was out there. There may have been as many as 12 to 15 craft in the air that night, possibly of different types. But I was scared out of my mind. I was just looking at the closest one. And then they put us on a bus that had painted over windows, so we couldn't see where we were going. Again, very much forbidden for anybody on that bus to talk to anybody else. So we were effectively isolated from each other. And then we got to what seemed like a medical dispensary type of facility. Not quite a hospital, but like a dispensary. Anybody who's been in the military is going to know what I'm talking about when I say medical dispensary. So we were sat down in this row of chairs. It was kind of setting in the room in a catty-cornered fashion. So it was kind of a squarish room. So the chairs went from one corner to a different corner instead of being against the walls. They were like through the middle of the room and going catty-corner from one corner to another. Okay. And we sat there. The lights were off in the room. The only light coming in was a light from a hallway with double doors with glass. And that was kind of shining in the room that was behind us all. And one by one, they came and called our name into this little room off to the side. When it was my turn to go in there, I was told to lay down on a stainless steel examining table, fully clothed. There was a guard in there standing at parade arrest with a sidearm, and I was laying there, and I was pretty much terrified, not knowing what to expect next. Finally, some guy in a white lab coat came in, walked past the security guard at the foot of the table, around to my right, up beside the right side of me, and he said, "Stay calm," 3 times in a very deadpan, sort of monotone voice. And when he got up beside the right side of my neck, he had a hypodermic needle hidden in the sleeve of his lab coat, and he brought it up in one smooth move and injected me in the right side of the neck with something. And that something put me in immediate shock. It's like the chemical rushed straight to the brain, and instantly I was shaking and in shock. Suddenly there's 2 security guards on either side of me, lifting me by both arms and hauling me off the table and took me out this door that had a stairway that went straight down. At the bottom of the stairway, there was like this little booth, and I got tossed in that booth and the door shut, and there was a one-way glass in there. I'm pretty sure they were watching me go through whatever I was going to go through in there, and right. I proceeded to go through the trauma of the shot, which was basically laying on the floor, shaking, screaming, my body feeling like it was shot full of Novocaine. You know how Novocaine, when it starts to wear off, you get this intense tingle? Magnify that times about 1,000, and I was feeling that all over my body. And it was the most horrible feeling, and it just went on for God knows how long. Finally, when it subsided, I was laying there just exhausted, not screaming anymore. And then I was pulled out of that room, and I was sexually assaulted by those 2 security guards that hauled me down there. And 8 people were watching. One of them was a gray ET. Pretty sure those 8 people that were watching, they didn't want to see what they were seeing, but they were forced to sit there and watch that happen to me, probably to threaten them and reinforce the fact that their superiors said, if you ever talk about this project outside of the facility, this is what's going to happen to your wife and your daughters or your sisters. You know, I'm pretty sure that that's what was going on, because I didn't get any feeling from them that they wanted to be there in any way.
Right. Actually, let me stop you right there for a minute, and we'll get some opinions on what's happening so far. Ahmad, what do you think about what she's gone through so far? Oh, he may not be at the mic. Okay, Dave, what do you think about what Niara has to say? Oh, there you are. Hey.
Yeah, it just takes me a second.
Gotcha.
I find it interesting, the fact that she was saying that she got sick whenever she mentioned that particular place. I see a correlation with Neil Armstrong would get sick and actually have to leave the presence of the people who were talking, and he would literally be sick for several hours afterwards.
Wow. That's right. I totally forgot about that. How about you, Dave? You got something you want to say about what's going on so far with Niara's story?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. I'm sure it was a disconcerting sight seeing guys in white lab coats. That, I'm sure that made things seem a lot scarier once you saw that.
Yeah, and I tell you, your reaction to the way it was, your reaction that you would shut down over a certain subject, that really struck home for me. Some of the people, well, most of the people listening know that I've had experiences with missing time too, and for some reason I've always just stayed away from the subject of abductions. You're like the second person I've talked to in 4 years about it, and now I can see what. Let's just say I'm relating to what you have to say. Dan, do you have anything to add before we let her get back to her story?
Just that the mentality of these people who are outside the law that can do these. This type of thing is, this stuff needs to get exposed, and I, commend Niara for coming out and getting this out into the public awareness, because I think it's important. The more people are aware operations like these are going on and abuses are going on like this. And, and the rest of Niara's story is quite fascinating, what happened when she went to the moon.
Right. So let's get back into your story, Niara. Go right ahead.
Yeah, there's a word for people like that called sociopaths.
Exactly.
So, in fact, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they didn't go into prisons and get sociopaths out of prison and say, hey, you can be out of prison as long as you do what we want you to do. And since it's right in line with what they like to do, they probably
Absolutely.
jump.
Absolutely. I believe that.
Yeah. The one security guard was, he had blue eyes, very cold ice blue eyes, and he had blonde, sort of wavy hair. And he was the one that I seemed to see on a regular basis during these kinds of experiences. So anyway, I've thought a lot about that chemical that I was injected with. And when I saw the movie Lucy, did you guys remember the movie Lucy starring Scarlett?
I haven't seen it, but I know the one you mean.
Yeah. Well, she had, she was somehow tricked into and forced to carry this chemical drug to some Japanese or Chinese mafia person.
Right.
And they made her open the briefcase while they stood behind shields.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that I was in that booth and they didn't want to be in the same room with me after I'd been injected with that drug was an interesting thought. And there was just a correlation there. And watching that movie, Lucy, just chilled the blood in my veins.
Right.
There was another scene where she was experiencing some kind of extremely rapid evolutionary process. And she was in an airplane bathroom, and her molecules started to just fly apart.
Right.
Like she was just going to dissolve. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was just going to dissolve and run down a drain in the floor. But the difference is I felt like I was going to dissolve and just be laying in molecules on the floor. I wasn't flying apart like in the airplane bathroom with her. But
Right.
There were a lot of correlations in that movie. And her consciousness underwent a very rapid evolution. And while I didn't have that rapid of an evolutionary process from what happened to me, there definitely was an accelerated evolutionary process that took place in me over a period of years after.
Wow.
One morning, I woke up in my Las Vegas apartment, and I don't know what I'd been doing in the dream state, but when I woke up, I looked around at my room and I looked out the window, and I just held very still because I had the strongest feeling that if I just blinked, my whole reality would shatter. And that was one thing. And then there were times when I saw other dimensional ETs in my room or hanging around. And these were very shy ETs. They were kind of golden looking. They reminded me of the ones in, what was that movie? With the old people interacting with
Cocoon.
Yeah, Cocoon. They reminded me of the ones in Cocoon. And they seemed very shy. And when one was looking at me, I had a cold one time, and I woke up in the middle of the night from congestion, and it was like one of these things had its head stuck through the wall, and it was just observing me. And when it saw me looking at it, it jerked its head back out through the wall and was gone.
Wow.
And I had another encounter with one of those as well. So anyway, it seemed like there was something happening in my consciousness. And I think because I really was a pretty spiritual person from the cradle up, that might have been one of the reasons that I was picked for getting injected with that chemical. They thought, well, maybe if she's already got some kind of spiritual development, then maybe this chemical will take her further,
right,
like we want her to go. Anyway, I've cogitated and thought about this for many, many years since this happened. And the only thing I've been able to come up with is that they're trying to design a drug that they can give to someone that will shift them into a higher dimension chemically.
Right.
Okay, so if there's this whole ascension thing to 5D that people talk about, And I'm sure the government poo-poos it on the surface. but underneath that, if they're really concerned about people getting out of the Earth sphere and going to a fifth dimensional realm, then they would like to have a way to follow people there and see what kind of things that they can, what kind of mischief they can create.
Right. They're trying to create an artificial way to get there.
Uh-huh. So anyway, that's kind of what
makes sense.
And it may be right, it may be wrong, I don't know, but that's what I've come to think.
It feels right to me.
Yeah.
I'm an empath. I'm sorry I haven't said that to you yet, but that's part of the reason I have so many issues and think it's either a ghost or a flippin' UFO. I can't see anything else in between. So it's something supernatural. So I'm getting chills sitting here listening to your story. Can we jump up a little bit, or it may even be your next step, to how you remembered the first encounter that got you on the moon, and what you did remember about that?
I remembered that in a hypnosis session later on that I had in 2003. I had it with a lady named Gloria Hawker. And I just had this feeling that I had been off planet. And so I asked the question, and that's when the moon stuff came out. And it wasn't pleasant at all. Basically, just to put it very simply, I was taken there to be used as hard labor during the day and for more sexual abuse at night with, a crew of guys that were working up there. It's like I was just handed to them.
Now, were these humans or were they aliens that they were?
They were humans.
So you were their prize or their treat for working hard.
Right.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember a couple of things from other sessions I've had with other people that I'll throw in here that are kind of interesting. I think that there is a thin atmosphere on the moon that if you're practiced like a deep sea diver, you can get by walking around without a suit out there.
At least for a short time, yes.
For a short time. And what I saw when I was asked the question under that session was, I said, is there air on the moon? Is there anything that can be breathed on the moon? And and the image, there weren't words that came, but an image came. And the image was of this gray-green algae that was growing on the surface of the moon. And any place where the sun hit it directly, it didn't grow very well. But down in the cracks and crevices and places where it could be in shadow all the time, it grew really well and it made oxygen.
Wow.
And the moon being what it is, it couldn't retain the oxygen all that well, but enough was retained that it did make things work a little bit. And maybe it was just a project in process and it would get better over time. I don't know. But I just put that out there for anybody that might have another piece of that puzzle.
Right.
Yeah. And then I had a session with Mary Rodwell in 2010. And that was a very interesting session. Basically, I got to go on the Lyran craft because I identify myself as a Lyran starseed, that my soul lineage is Lyran. And so in this session with Mary Rodwell, I met the commander of our mothership, and he was very much like a father-like figure, very loving, very kind, just had the most incredible eyes. And he says, I need to take you on a little journey. And so we went in the astral, traveling to Mars, and we kind of flew over the area where Sidonia is with the pyramids and the face. And what I could see happening there was that there were human beings doing an archaeological dig there.
Right.
Okay. And that was fascinating. That was just something, again, I put that out there in case somebody else has a piece of the puzzle. And
do you remember seeing ruins of the city aside from Sidonia?
Do I? No, I don't.
Okay.
I just saw the Sedona area with the picture, with the pyramids and the face. I did get the impression that there was a lot of human activity on Mars.
Right.
And that fits with a lot of things I've heard from other whistleblowers and experiencers. And,
any chance you saw Corey Good when you were up there?
Oh no, I saw all this from a distance, like a flyover.
Okay.
And then this commander said, "Now we're going to do something difficult." He said, "We're going to go to the moon in the past when you were there." Then I said, "Please, can we not go there? I just don't want to go back anywhere near that place." And he says, "You need to see what I'm going to show you." So we went to the moon of the past, and I was shown a conversation happening telepathically, actually, between a very tall, willowy extraterrestrial and an officer who was in charge of my time on the moon. And the ET was telling him telepathically, "You have no idea who you have there. Do you realize that everything you're doing to her gets reported back to her people?" And it was shortly after that I was taken out of the program. My mind was wiped, and I was not taken to the moon anymore. Wow. And I wasn't in the program at Tonopah or Area 51 anymore either. And it made me wonder if there is some kind of treaty or agreement with the Lyrans and the United States government that their people will not be used in this kind of fashion. And that extends to someone who incarnates as human for a particular purpose on Earth.
Right.
And as far as being reported back to them, that happened for me. So I would travel in the astral body during sleep to the Lyran mothership, and I would go into a glass tube, and they would wave their hand over a switch, and inside the glass tube there would be waves of sound and light, and they would be bouncing back and forth within this glass tube and passing through my astral body. And as they passed through my astral body, they didn't do any harm, but they did upload all my memories and experience up to that point into the holographic systems of the Lyran ship. And then anybody could go to one of the consoles of this extremely advanced holographic computer system and watch or even experience the things that I was experiencing as a human here on Earth.
Wow. Let me stop you for a second. We have Bruce McDonald, another host here, has asked me to ask you a question. Now I may be jumping the gun and you may be getting up to this, but was there any proof that you've come across that you may be a hybrid?
I don't know that there's any proof that I've come across, but it has crossed my mind many times because I think that I may have been adjusted in the womb.
So if not you, your mother perhaps.
Yeah. My mother never would own to any kind of extraterrestrial contact whatsoever. She'd look at me like I was crazy if I even suggested it.
Right.
But my dad was an abductee. I found that out.
Oh, wow.
That he had been taken, and when they'd bring him back home, they'd sometimes drop him in his bed from like 3 feet above, and he'd wake up. And my dad, and it really follows a pattern because my dad was alcoholic, and he would stay out at the bars until they closed like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, my
and
Lord.
I think that he may have been doing that to try to avoid being picked up.
Yeah, I can guarantee you that's exactly what he was doing, Sunshine. Because that's what I do, or what I used to.
He never mentioned it to me, but if he was still alive, I'm sure that he and I would probably have some very interesting conversations.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's stop there for a second. Ahmad, I'll give you a quick shout out now. I know it takes a second for you. There you go. What do you think about the story up till now?
Oh, I find it really intriguing. I can prove for a fact that there is an atmosphere on the moon with Photoshop.
Nice.
I know there's an atmosphere there. Yeah. What it is, I have no clue.
Right. And there was a movie, you probably know the guy. Actually, you may even brought him up when we were talking before with just me, you, and Scorpio, about the guy who did a movie about the true colors of the moon and how that there was an atmosphere, and, just It's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, Jose Escamilla. He's
it.
passed away now.
Oh,
Yeah.
But him and Bill Bronson actually filmed the moon in true color, and European Space Administration has actually confirmed that there is color there.
Now, do you know if there's any
NASA's the only
clips
one
left
that's been
online?
lying.
What's that? Sorry?
NASA's the only one that's been lying.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's their name, right? NASA. It means to deceive in Hebrew. So what do you expect? Dan, what are you thinking so far? You've probably already heard her story, but still, what do you think?
NASA, never a straight answer, NASA.
Yeah.
Well, one part of the story that I found intriguing was that that she was on board a craft where a reptilian being was a very tall one with claws and scales and everything, which this whole story about the blue-eyed blonde doctor and the it sounds kind of like Joseph Mengele kind of
Right.
a situation, and the fact that the U.S. Air Force, Niara and I was on the movie Above Majestic, where we're talking about how essentially in my part of the movie was talking about how Eisenhower lost control to the Nazi Fourth Reich, which the Air Force got involved with, and the CIA. And so to me, it sounds like it's almost like this Nazi Draco alliance that when Eisenhower lost control, these operations that do this type of abusive behavior to people, in a very Nazi-like kind of way, seems to correlate. Niara, could you describe the craft and the reptilian that I remember you talked about before?
Yeah, it was the craft that would take me to the moon, and it was saucer shaped, from what I recall. You'd enter it by a ladder or steps underneath it. When I was told to go there, I was given a suit of clothes to wear that was kind of silvery and shapeless, but when you put it on, it form fit itself to your body.
Right.
And that was real interesting. It came with boots and gloves and a whole body suit. And then I'd get on the ship, and I was told to lay down on the floor like cargo. And the seats were reserved for more important people. So anyway, I was laying on the floor, and there was a big central beam in the middle of the craft. And while I was laying there, a reptilian being, who I assume was the pilot, stepped out from behind that beam, and I saw him. And I saw reptilians a couple of times during these experiences that I recall. And each time that I saw them, they were so terrifying to look at, and they had such a terrifying aura, if that makes sense, energy, that it's like all the breath would squeeze out of my lungs, and I could hardly get a breath in.
Wow.
And they're just really terrifying to look at, and they like it that way. And sometimes they'll curl their lips away from their teeth just to look even more terrifying.
Right. Pricks. Like it's not a scary enough situation that they have to go, holy crap.
Well, the other thing I want to add in here is about when Dan was talking about Eisenhower losing control and the Nazis and the Third Reich taking over. Well, we brought all those people over after World War II from the Third Reich, and we put them to work for our government, gave them American names, scrubbed up their profiles, and gave them jobs within our government. And from
top
there,
secret clearance,
yeah, and they began to subvert our government from within.
Exactly.
I mean, that was just nuts to do such a thing, just
well, we were told about it even in comic books, and stuff like Marvel Comics. The Nazis were Hydra in the comics.
Yeah.
In those movies that are out now, you can watch those. Well, even the Winter Soldier even brings up Project Paperclip. So
Star Trek Enterprise.
There. So I have no trouble believing like everything you are saying that I believe this could be happening. I'm right there with you. So far, everything you said seems viable to me. It's mind blowing.
Star Trek Enterprise had an arc in their storyline arc in their series where they explored Nazis working together with reptilians that were time traveling, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been explored in science fiction, and as a lot of us know, some of the stuff that gets out in science fiction is stuff that actually happens.
Well, and the machine they use in that episode that the reptilians are building looks just like CERN.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what started really getting me. It was actually that show that woke up a lot of things in me and got me starting to research the whole Project Looking Glass thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wild.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dave, we haven't heard from you in a little while, buddy. How you doing?
Good. I was wondering if she could describe what the Lyrans looked like, physically.
Great question, yeah.
Well, they're very humanoid looking. They have blue skin, which varies in skin color tone, like we do when we have had sun or not had sun. Some are darker pigmentation, some are lighter.
They're like the Vedas, and even like that show with the Marvel, the Kree. They're all blue skinned with different, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them have golden blonde hair. Did you guys ever watch Stargate SG-1?
Yes.
Which I think is the best soft disclosure show out there.
Oh, easily. The movie blew me away. The original movie.
If you replace the fact that it's Air Force with Navy, you've got really, really excellent soft disclosure there. Right. Well, there was an episode in there where Samantha Carter meets one of the ascended beings, and he sees her and he kind of falls in love with her, and so he makes himself have a human body so that he can interact with her. And there was a point where she finally stopped pushing him away, and he says, "Just let me show you how I think and feel about you, and then if you want me to, I'll just go away." And so she closes her eyes, and he connects his energy with her, and she feels his love for her and how he feels and thinks about her on a very profound, beyond words level.
Right.
When I met and talked to that commander on the ship, that's how it felt. It was very, very profound. It was a whole energy exchange that went way beyond words. And it just left you hardly even being able to speak, because words are so inadequate for what you're experiencing being connected to that being.
Right.
And it was just pure love,
An emotional telepathy.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And so that, when I had the hypnosis experience with Mary Rodwell, and then I watched Stargate and that experience that Samantha Carter had with that ascended being, that was it. That was just the best representation that I could possibly have seen on TV.
Right. Well, actually, even Star Trek The Next Generation, I believe it was, did one with Dr. Crusher being on a planet with some guy who had a mad crush on her.
Uh-huh. I remember that, too. I remember that one, too.
God, I love that show. Garrett Wang from Star Trek Voyager was actually going to be partners with me for my show Factor Theory Live. We were going to do a TV show. And once the police showed up and started giving me hassles, he chickened out. I even got the clip. I've played it on my show. But those shows are really good for bringing out a lot of the things. And even Gene Roddenberry.
Wow. And the Nazis really began a lot of the trauma-based mind control programs in the Jewish concentration camps. Mm-hmm. They really experimented and thought, though it varies a little bit from person to person, just how far can you push the human psyche and the human physiology to traumatize them enough that they break off the memory that you want them to break off and bury it in the deep subconscious.
Right. Well, and even the big LSD experiment, right, when they did in Pont Saint-Esprit in France, that was just nuts. Yeah,
and two other movies look at a different aspect of this. One was Paycheck, starring Ben Affleck, and the other one was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey.
Right.
And they had equipment that they could hook up to the human being, and they would go into the brain and they would zap the neurological connections to isolate a block of memory, so it would kind of erase it as if it was never there.
Right.
Now they can't erase memory. They can mess with it in the neurons of the brain, but memory is also carried in our human aura.
Right.
And so
there's no getting rid of that.
If you have enough to go on, you can rebuild those connections back to the actual memories, little by little. I don't think that they're ever totally gone. I think you can rip out all the connections to isolate a block of memory in the mind or in the brain, but you can't destroy the memory. You can only try to isolate it.
Right. And maybe
I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
That makes a lot of sense as well, you know.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, wow, we're going through down a lot of different paths today.
Yeah, and that's what this show's about. That's why we like to have so many hosts too. Ahmad, do you have something you'd like to add?
Well, before she gets too far away from the moon stuff, I was wondering if she thought the moon was artificial.
There's a good question. Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I
Siri?
definitely think it's artificial. There is no other heavenly body that I know of that spins around a planet in such a way that it only shows one side all the time, down through the ages.
And isn't it the only one that's perfectly round?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure that's what's been said by science as well.
Yeah.
So.
And hollow.
Yeah, the orb is almost circular. It's close to circular, and it's it's in tidal lock. We're also in tidal lock with Venus, so which is kind of odd too.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe it's artificial myself. Personally, that's just my personal opinion. I think it was an arc of some kind.
Yeah,
that makes sense, and that it was actually dragged into the position it's in now. The possibility of that over time.
Almost all moons rotate in around the equator of their mother planet, and ours doesn't.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that would have caused a lot of the calamities that's been written about, like even floods and stuff. That moon being dragged into position.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as William Tompkins says, it's not our moon, and it's not a moon.
I would really love to find someone here. Maybe there is. Anyone who's listening, you can get a hold of us through revolution.radio or freedomslips.com. Go into the chat room and just get in touch with us and let us know if you have any information on that stuff. And while I'm on the subject, you can also click the donate button. We're 100% listener supported, and that means we get to talk about the things that we're talking about right now without having to worry about some corporate sponsor threatening to pull their ads. So you can also go to the store, Zazzle.com and Zazzle.ca, or you can scroll down and become a patron on Patreon. We do have a break coming up in about 7 minutes. Let's see, who haven't we heard from in a while? David, what are you doing, young man? David Scorpio. You have anything to add so far?
Well, I wanted to ask Ahmad about the atmosphere of the moon. What was the color that they're showing on the atmosphere there?
It's not them. It's me personally. I could take you in there to some of the pictures that I've gathered over the years, and if you change the light refraction, it shows a haze along the horizon, which means there's an atmosphere.
Is there a color that's showing up that you're seeing or not?
No, it's just most of the pictures are all black and white that you can get.
Yeah.
I haven't played with it in quite some time. Once I discover it, I said, well, hell, I already know. So I didn't bother playing with it.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is, John Lear and a couple of the other, contactees from the 1950s were claiming that the moon's atmosphere had sort of a yellowish color to it. I wondered if our guest had, Niara, had heard anything about that, or what she thought the atmosphere looked like there.
I didn't get a chance to see. My time on the moon was very strictly controlled.
Yeah, you were stuck laying down, like you were saying too, as well, right? For parts of the
just
trip.
laying down on the craft, like I said, worked very hard at mostly manual labor during the day, and then more sexual abuse at night. And I was not allowed to sleep, which is another mind control technique. Sleep deprivation, and it probably could have something to do with my sleep problems I have today. And not fed well. Something similar to a bread and water diet while I was there.
Wow. That's like, it's mind bending because, like I said, I've never done hypnosis. I'd like to find somebody here in Canada that may be reputable and has experience with it that I could get in touch with, because the things I do remember, like my one situation, I was about 17. It was either just before or just after the birth of my first child. And yeah, I started young. And I was hitchhiking to see his mother, and it would have been about a 5-hour walk to get there, 4.5 to 5 hours. And I was a half hour into my walk, saw something in the sky over Niagara Falls. And then the next thing I know, I was continuing the same thought, just turning my head back straight from seeing this thing. But I was walking into the mouth of the city that was another 4 hours away from me. I somehow got, like, whoever, if it was a situation like, now I suppose it could have also been some sort of teleportation as well on my part, but I'm thinking it may have been help from the outside, and these guys actually dropped me off where I was going. So I was saying I don't think my experience, if I had one, was very traumatic at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had a 4-hour missing. I don't know if I ever told you that, Stephen, when after I went to Washington, met with Jaime Maussan, I had some lunch, and he invited me to go to Mexico, and we had about 7,000 people, and I was on Telemundo television in Mexico,
Nice.
talking about the technologies that could be released and help solve this, this pollution problem in Mexico City. When I went across the border with my friend and my little sports car, it normally would take a half hour to go across the border and get up to our home. Like 4 hours was completely missing to both of us, and we checked the clocks and everything. So I don't know what happened.
No, you know what? Sorry, I was taking some of my medicine. You haven't told me that story. That's pretty wild. But it was actually the one story that you had talked about, was it about a month and a half ago, when we had Steve Hudgens on as well? That was the one that made me remember that dream that I had told you about, where I was in some sort of craft in what looked like interdimensional space, and there was like geographic shapes in the air, and just it was totally mind-bending, and you could see through the walls. So I don't know if that was just a wild dream or not, but I don't remember my dreams very often, just ones like that are like, there was the one dream I had about looking up in the sky and seeing two large ships in battle, like they were firing like lasers or something at each other. And that would stuck with me, because that was like 20 years ago. I had no idea about Space Force and the deep state and the secret Space Force and all of this other stuff. So that dream really stood out. And there was one more where you're looking up in the sky, and in our atmosphere, way closer than the moon, is actual meteors that, like, as if they had been pulled into orbit so they could be mined. Those are the kind of things I'm wondering if those are premonitions, were there some sort of contact? And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who've got the same questions. That's why I tended to poo-poo this whole abduction thing a lot. And I'm starting to think that may be why, because maybe something did happen to me, and that's why I've been avoiding that whole part of the UFO phenomenon. Okay, we have a break coming up in precisely 1 minute. Dave, do you got anything you want to add before we take off the break? And when we come back, there will be a quick clip.
No, let's go ahead and take it away. They only got maybe just a few seconds before the music comes on. So, yeah.
Okay, so
we'll go for it next hour.
I will do that. Minimize this.
Alien lives matter.
Alien lives matter.